Well, good afternoon and welcome to MassDOT's 2022 Safe Routes to School Infrastructure Program launch. A few reminders about the session. Please put all questions in the chat and we will address them during our Q&A. To see text captions on the screen, please enable live transcript using your Zoom menu. And this session is being recorded and will be on the Safe Routes to School website shortly. Today, I'm joined by Miranda Briseno, Federal Programs Coordinator. And by the way, I'm Diane Hansen. I'm the Massachusetts Safe Routes to School Program Director. Miranda may be a new face to some of you as she recently joined MassDOT in this new role and will be taking over coordination of the Safe Routes to School program from Derek Cravatt at MassDOT. And Derek is still with MassDOT and he's on the call today helping to answer some questions as well, but we're super excited to have Miranda joining us. She came to MassDOT from Walk Boston, and prior to that, she was a planner for the city of Medford. Also later in the presentation, we'll invite Francisco Lovero from MassDOT Highway Design to talk about the 2019 Engineering Directive and its impacts on project scope. Francisco has over 17 years of transportation engineering experience, specializing in traffic engineering and highway safety. He just recently rejoined MassDOT after working at RIDOT for several years, and we are happy to have him back. Today's agenda covers a brief introduction to Safe Routes to School. Keep in mind that we will sometimes use the acronym SRTS for Safe Routes to School because it's a big mouthful. So throughout this presentation, and we will review the funding program and eligibility requirements, the application instructions, and how the application will be evaluated. Lastly, we'll take questions live in the chat. So let's jump right into the program overview. Our goal at Safe Routes is to increase safe walking, biking, and rolling among all public school students. And I said all because this is the first year that we actually get to welcome our high school communities. So we're really excited about that. So K through 12 are all eligible for the Safe Routes to School program. A little bit different when we get to infrastructure, and you'll see that in a bit. But we take a whole community approach to this program and focus on both health and safe transportation. Many of you are aware that we use the 6 E's of Safe Routes to School to guide our program. This is a national framework. 5 of the E's are considered non-infrastructure and are the main focus of our work with schools. The 6th E is engineering, and that's why we're all here today. Here's some examples of the services we provide to our partner schools and communities, and this is by no means inclusive of everything we do, but it should give you a good overview of how we break out our programming by E. For education, we provide training to students as well as to our educators. Under encouragement, our 3 annual flagship days, including iWalk in October, which is next week, Winter Walk in February, and Massachusetts Walk, Bike, and Roll to School Day in May. And lastly, our encouragement resources include support and training materials for crossing guards, as well as formation and support for local Safe Routes to School task forces. Our last E is equity, which we consider our all-encompassing E. Our equity resources include our Inclusion and Abilities Guide, our policy support for school districts and municipalities, and equity strategies for schools framework. In order to receive support from our program, you must be a Safe Routes to School partner. And as I'll mention in the next few slides, in order to apply for infrastructure, you need to have been a partner for at least 6 months as of today. So today is the cutoff. There are a few ways to check if you're a partner and how long you've been a partner. And one is to visit the main page of our Safe Routes website and view the PDF list of partners. That's a static list. It doesn't get as updated as often as the dashboard does, which is a live feed from our activities tool from Salesforce. So to check on that, you would go to our evaluation page and click on the link for the Safe Routes to School dashboard. That's that lower right-hand picture. And if your school is listed there, you are a partner and it will tell your join date. If you are not a partner, you can enroll using a quick online form available on the main page of our website. And the reason I mention all of the services by E is that a school and community's engagement with our program is important when applying. You must be actively engaged as a school partner. So many of the resources I just mentioned are listed here. Leon, I am going to ask you to paste the application guidance document in the chat right now, as well as a copy of this presentation. So these are two things that are really important. The presentation I'm giving right now, all of the hyperlinks are active, so you should be able to click on those and get where you need to go. And secondly, the application guidance document is everything that I'm going through today. You can even follow along if, pretend we're in school, follow along as I go through all of the application steps. We do have two types of grants available within the Safe Routes to School program. Our Signs and Lines grants are reimbursement based and provide up to $6,000 to improve signage and pavement markings within half mile of a partner school. The application period for this year's round did close 2 weeks ago, mid-September, and we will be awarding 5 grants for this school year. Our infrastructure grants are for much larger projects and span from around 200,000 to, we'll say, 1.5 to $2 million. And since program inception, going back more than 10 years, we've completed 39 projects. In addition, there are 33 that are currently in progress. We do plan to award up to 10 projects for this round of applications. And now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Miranda to review eligible applicants and eligible projects. Everything that we will review is in the application guidance document. So please make sure that you download that from the chat or from the Safe Routes website. Miranda, welcome.
Thank you, Diane. And it's nice to somewhat meet you all and excited to work together. So like Diane stated, eligible applicants are now K through 12 schools and schools that fulfill the following. Again, partner of up to at least 6 months. So that would be April 3rd of this year. You receive public funding and are committed to ongoing Safe Routes to School activities. And we especially encourage schools that are serving diverse socioeconomic communities to apply. A good note is that you will need to indicate some, or at least a level of partnership with your DPW, engineering office, planning office, the municipality, as they will be the folks that we work with once the project is awarded. So eligible projects that can be funded through this program include transportation, construction, and capital improvements that improve the safety and or increase the number of children walking or biking to school, are located within a 2-mile radius of a K through 12 school or school campus, and are within the public right-of-way or bicycle and pedestrian pathway. Students must be the primary beneficiaries of the project, and the project must be ADA accessible. Projects that won't be funded are recurring costs. So this would be something like wages for crossing guards or other volunteers, pavement maintenance, travel lane improvements, so widening or adding a travel lane, which can likely negatively impact the pedestrian and bicycle safety, won't be funded, and school bus improvement projects are not eligible. So some examples of projects are sidewalk improvements. This could be something like, upgrading ADA access, traffic calming, which can vary in a wide range, crossing improvements, making it safer for pedestrians and cyclists to get to and from their actual school, and improved bicycle facilities. So what's covered under project costs? It's funding for design and construction. There's no match required. The funding that we get from the federal government is 80% of project costs, and MassDOT funds the other 20%. So there is no match required on the municipality side. And we have 3 different levels of project cost estimates. A small project budget, $250,000 or less, medium project, $250,000 to $800,000, and a large project of $800,000 to $1.5 million. And we have an example cost estimate. These can be higher or lower depending on current inflation and supply chain. And these assumptions in the spreadsheet assume a 10-foot wide shared use path from the face of the curb to the back of the path and 24-foot wide roadways, excuse me. These cost estimates do not include the full depth roadway reconstruction or widening, permitting, or temporary and permanent right-of-way acquisition. Those costs are the responsibility of the municipality and should not be included in the project cost estimate when you are filling your application out. And now I will pass it along to my MassDOT colleague, Francisco.
Thank you so much, Miranda. So other project considerations, this project, like any other project that the department is putting out, it needs to comply with the control criteria and its justification process that has been outlined in the latest engineering directive. As Miranda mentioned earlier, the projects need to make sure that all the facilities are complying with American with Disabilities Act, ADA. Next slide. So the intent, and quite often projects that we are reviewing in the department tend to become sidewalk improvements, which are important to have, but our hope is that the applicants the applications that we receive are not only improving the paths for people who are walking, but we are trying to make a serious effort and a serious intent to increase the number of kids. And now with high schools being part of the program, it's going to be more feasible for allowing students to reach their facilities from home and vice versa in the way home via bicycle. For bicycle amenities, we understand that it could be marked or separated bike lanes or a shared use path. And we're expecting to see that sidewalks should be provided on both sides of those facilities. Next slide. Just a reminder that SHAROs or share the road arrows are not really a bicycle facility. They are not qualifying based on their latest directive. And we also need to have the projects that are making a connection within the network that exists nearby. We need to think about where those projects are being proposed, where they're terminating. That's going to be critical on our end as we review the projects. So now I'll give it back to Diane so we can go over the application instructions.
Thank you, Francisco. So yeah, a lot of the things that we see is Francisco and Miranda were saying is we're building this project, but we're connecting maybe a shared use path to now an area that doesn't have anything, doesn't have a sidewalk, it doesn't have any other facility. So we really want everyone to think about how we're making this a complete network. And so the project application must really reflect that. So thank you both. I'm sure we'll have lots of questions for you as we get to the end of this, but I do want to go into the application instructions. So the application is available in Map-It. That's MassDOT's project intake tool. So if you've never worked in Map-It, I do have a list of Map-It account holders. If you don't know, maybe you're at a school or the school district and you don't know who has an account within the municipality, you could reach out to me, or you can also just request an account. There are all the instructions and hyperlinks to do so. Once you have an account, you're going to log into the main page with your credentials. And the first thing that you're going to see is something that looks like this. It says select a workflow. So the workflow that you're going to select is local aid. And when you do that, the grant type pops up, and make sure that you select SRTS. That's very important because then your project will be directed to the right people to review the project details. The start of the application process includes entering some really basic information like the project name, the date, the municipality, and the school district. Municipal contact information is next, followed by the scope of work. The scope of work should be very brief, something like installing 200 feet of sidewalk along Maple Avenue from Elm to Pine, or installing pedestrian warning flasher assembly at Maple and Pine, installing new ADA ramps and crosswalks at all 3 intersections, something like that. Very simple, brief. Next, it will ask you to enter a desired start date for construction. As you'll see in the timeline towards the end of this presentation, these projects do take a bit of time to start. So you can put the date of the application in this section, or if you know that you have a complementary project starting within a couple years, things like that, you can put in another start date in there. At the end of this section, you will click Save and Next and go to the following page. Keep in mind that you can always save your work and come back to it throughout the application process. The next section is called sketching. So here you're going to select the polygon tool shown at near the bottom of the screen near number 1, that's the sketching tool, and draw a polygon around the project area on the map, showing the limits of the project. Use the left mouse click to add the vertices and double click to finish. Ensure that all the project limits are mapped as closely as possible to the project. The polygon should only encompass areas where the infrastructure project work is intended to take place. Once the polygon is drawn, you'll see a little window pop up that says select routes or routes. We call it routes up here for Safe Routes to School. These routes will appear displaying roads that intersect with the polygon. You can uncheck or check all the roads that you want to have included in your project. The project must be within 2 miles of a public K through 12 school. So click Save and Next to move on to the next step. The one action required in this step 4 is to click the button that says click here to run geoprocessing. And you'll see that's point number 1 up here. The application will automatically intersect the project polygon with pre-configured layers that can be used during the application review. So if you can actually take a look at some of the layers, it'll say hopefully intersects with the school because that's what you want to have come up. It'll show that it's near the school area. Text will begin to appear beneath the geoprocessing button. This can take 1 to 2 minutes or longer depending on your connection speed. So things are still working. You just have to be a little bit patient when you're going through this step. Intersecting layers will begin to get highlighted in yellow. And when geoprocessing is complete, the page will say succeeded at the bottom along with the time that it took. And then you're just going to hit Save and Next. The next section of questions is the bulk and the remainder of the application, and we'll go over each section in the following slides. You can see a detailed list of instructions for each question in the application guidance document. And I know I'm going to sound like a broken record when I say this, but truly we do go over every single question and how to answer it in the guidance document. So this is just meant to be a supplement to that. Questions 1 through 17 ask more details about the school and the municipal applicant. For the school applicant, provide the name of somebody at the school that will be a point of contact for the project. This could be a principal, it could be a school administrator, it could be somebody from the district or someone else in a leadership role at the school or district, but we definitely need somebody from the school or the district. This person can also be the main proponent for this project. For the municipal co-applicant, the municipality must be aware of the proposed project. And I will say that for the most part, the municipality has been the applicant, the main applicant for most of these projects that come in. Each application must be associated with a municipal government. So providing the name of the municipal co-applicant, this person should have decision-making authority for local projects, preferably work within the municipal department responsible for maintaining the local infrastructure. So although the appropriate co-applicant will vary by municipality, the most successful Safe Routes projects have had buy-in from the Department of Public Works, city or town engineering. And for advice on who to list as your co-applicant, just reach out to your city or town's Department of Public Works, engineering, or any similar department like planning. Other municipal offices and officials could be considered, such as Board of Selectmen, Town Manager, Mayor's Office, Planning Department, but priority is definitely given to those who submit applications from those directly responsible for maintaining infrastructure because they're going to be involved throughout this process. If the proposed project is selected to advance, the co-applicant will definitely be contacted to make sure, one, they were aware of the project, two, that they're in support of the project. So this is really important. In part one, we gather more detailed school information. So you must answer whether the school is designated as Title I, also provide the percentage of students considered economically disadvantaged or low income. Those are different scores that DESE, Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, uses. Basic enrollment information, information about how students travel to and from school. Many of these questions will require that the municipality work with the school to get these questions answered. So we're looking to gather busing information, distance to school, mode share. There are also hyperlinks in the guidance document that can help you get that information that we're asking. Your school does not have mode share data, and that means like how many kids walk or bike or take the bus or get driven to school. You do have the option to leave that section blank or with zeros if you don't know or you won't have time for a survey. But I will say that that information is really critical for us when we're making a decision about the projects. In part two, we get very specific about the project details. So when describing the project, please be as specific as possible, including road names, project limits, proposed improvements, and briefly note the identified issues that will be addressed by the improvements. This description allows for 500 words. One thing that you are not allowed to do is say, see attached document. We really are asking that you add your description of the project in this section here. You should be able to succinctly describe the project within 500 words. In order to find out if the project is on an existing biking or walking route, you can reference the potential for everyday biking resource or potential for walkable trips resource. Those links are also in the guidance document. This section also allows you to submit photos, renderings of the project area. So please only submit photos and drawings in this section. There will be another place for you to upload any other documents like going on to the next slide, like letters of support from the community. So questions on this section focus on the problems, the needs, and the opportunities. You'll be asked to detail the objective of the project, for example, lack of sidewalks or pedestrian facilities or lack of complete street network. So that's where you're going to start to get into the details of the problems and the opportunities. Visit MassDOT's impact portal to gather any additional information for this section, like the history of crashes near the project site. You can also talk to your local police department for police reports, MassDOT's interactive crash map. All of these links and resources are available in the guidance document. Community support and existing plans that support this project are part of this section. We do highly recommend, and I'm calling this out very strongly, that you provide letters of community support for your applications. Sometimes we get the most amazing applications, but there's no indication that there's any community support behind it. So that's really important that you attach those. We do ask for a draft cost estimate. You can utilize the sample budgets in the guidance document, and they don't have to be elaborate, but it really helps us figure out what your understanding of the project scope and budget is for when we go and start evaluating these projects. And they can all be attached as PDFs in the last question, which is question 40. So the budget and other supplemental documents like letters of support and from stakeholders, anyone in the municipality, from the school, these are attached in question 40. Once all questions are answered, you can click the submit for acceptance, this big green button right here, but just make sure that you're ready to submit. Once you submit, you cannot go back and make edits. So it's saving throughout the entire process. The last step is to submit for acceptance. Once you do that, your application becomes visible to Safe Routes to School and to MassDOT, and that's now considered received. If you make a mistake, you just reach out to us and we can, I believe we can reverse that and put it back in your hands, but I really do suggest that you just wait until you're ready and submit. You will receive an email confirmation from MassDOT. It looks very similar to this, and saying that we've received your application. So after the application period closes, The applications will be reviewed by a project selection committee, and I'll go over the criteria in a bit. But once reviewed, the applicants will be notified and projects will advance to steps 6 and 7. If a project is not selected during this time, it can be resubmitted during the next application period. All of the applications that are in MAPIT, including ones from last year, ones that were not accepted, are still there, and they can be edited and resubmitted for an application again. The project need form is a MAPIT form that's used for state and federally funded projects across the Commonwealth. The PNF provides preliminary information about the proposed project in order to have it programmed into the State Transportation Improvement Plan, or STIP. Only the projects selected by the committee are invited to complete the PNF. It won't even show up as an option until we've advanced it for you. The local municipality, that means somebody from engineering, planning, DPW, is responsible for filling out the PNF. Safe Routes staff can help with this, but this really is something the municipality should be filling out on their own. The school does not need to worry about anything in this step. Once the PNF is accepted, projects then advance to a project scope. Just as with the PNF, the municipality is responsible for completing this step, and a member of the Safe Routes team can assist if necessary. The applicant school may be contacted during the step, but again, the school at this point is no action required by them. Once this is complete, it's sent to MassDOT for final approval by the project review committee at MassDOT. And after approval, the project essentially goes into project info, MassDOT's project tracking system, and then it is no longer available in MAPIT. So I know that's a lot of information. And again, this is just meant to supplement what's in the guidebook, but I wanted to give you an outline of the steps. The following slides are the application evaluation. Each question and section is given a number of points. I'm not going to go through all the details of each of these sections, but I just want to highlight this as part of the guidance document so you can review the scoring. This is part 1, which is the school information. You have part 2 and 3, which is the facility and the problem, need, and opportunity. And lastly, we have 2 additional scoring sections, one for Safe Routes to School program involvement. So I did say earlier that your evaluation and part of the application is your involvement over the past few years with the Safe Routes program. There's another section for equity indicators. These are not part of the MAPIT application, but they are part of the scoring. And the maximum total points that can be awarded is 115 out of these. Here's the timeline for this school year for the projects overall. So today we are on Monday, October 3rd. We are launching. Applications are due by Friday, November 18th. And we expect to have a selection after the first of the year and begin scheduling scoping meetings and site visits in early to mid-January. These are all approximate dates. Of course, weather has a lot to do with when these things happen, and sometimes we have to postpone site visits. But the goal is to get these in front of the project review committee before the end of the state fiscal year in June. That's the goal, and we just don't have times for that yet. But I wanted to give everyone a sense of what that looks like. And then also you have your 5-year plan. We are in year 1 right now. We are looking at programming out to 2027 for these projects. So just so you understand, this is not a, you get the grant and you receive the money and you're doing this within a year. Right now, we're looking at construction end dates of 2027 for these types of projects. So with that, I just want to go, before we go into Q&A, I want to highlight a few upcoming events. I did mention iWalk, International Walk, Bike, and Roll to School Day. That's on Wednesday, October 12th. If your school has not signed up already, you can go to our website and fill out the online form. We also have our webinar for municipalities on January 25th and Winter Walk on February 1st. So as I've been talking here, I'm seeing the chat queue grow and grow and grow. So I'm now going to call upon some of the experts who've joined me on the call. So Derek, Miranda, Francisco, And we will start to answer some of these questions. I'll start with the first one here from Marie. We're a regional vocational school, 9 to 12 school. Our campus is on two sides of Route 62. Would a bridge or tunnel for students be an eligible project? I'm going to throw that to Francisco or Derek, I think.
I think as,
oh, go ahead, Francis.
I think as part of connectivity, the project would qualify. My only concern is the amount of funding that would be available for that under the current grant process.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I would agree. I think I don't know if we've ever had a project like that in the past. I will say I've seen examples from other states where pedestrian bridges are funded with the same funding source that is used for this. So it's Transportation Alternatives Program funding. It's a federal funding source. So that seems to be a little bit of a more common than project type than tunneling, which I know does get expensive. So yeah, always good to keep costs in mind as part of it. But I think pedestrian bridge would be considered an eligible expense overall.
Yep, thank you. Mary Beth asks, do all projects need to be wheelchair accessible? Francisco, that's a big yes, right?
Oh yeah, it's a
ADA
must.
compliant, absolutely. Is sidewalk replacement on school grounds allowed as part of a larger sidewalk roadway improvement project for the school? So I think that depends on going back to Francisco's presentation or Francisco's slides where we talk about a complete network. If we're just redoing a sidewalk, it's probably not the type of project we're looking for. If we're improving connectivity for bike and ped, because all projects need to include bike and ped accommodations. So a sidewalk is not considered a bike accommodation. So Francisco, I don't know if you want to go a little bit more into that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Diane. And I think the question would be regarding right of way, because the sidewalk within this school grounds, I'm not sure if it qualifies under public right of way under the state guidelines. We can figure out that with our state with our right of way folks, and we can get back to on that question.
But we have done projects on school campus because if they're receiving public funding, we can do the work for the most part. Again, it just depends on the connectivity. What are we connecting to, right? And what are we improving? So Mary Ellen says, we have 3 campuses on one road separated by Route 9. Would a raised walkway be eligible? So I think we answered that. Cost is more of a concern, I think, for that type of project.
Yep, I'd agree. Yeah, it depends on the size of it, but if it can be compelling that it's within the project budgets that I think Miranda had presented, then it's something to be considered. It's not ruling it out, but it's also yeah, could be eligible. Yep.
Steve asks, is it mandatory that all projects have sidewalks on both sides of the streets?
I can take that one, Diane. The department has a stringent process to justify why we would not be providing sidewalks on both sides and bicycle accommodations. Generally, the reasons tend to be more technical and should be more technical. We will not be asking, taking someone's house in order to provide space for the sidewalks on both sides or affect environmental sensitive areas. We're not going to fill a wetland for that. But if a project is proposing to have a roadway curb to curb space that is more than 11 feet for travel lane, we're hoping that communities are looking to reduce the space that's allocated for cars and increase the size of the sidewalks. Utilities are not a reason. Budget is generally not a reason. The same thing with timeline. It's not generally a reason for which we would not, or we would allow a project without sidewalks on both sides.
And I'll add, I think when we go out and do these site visits too, if you're going to do sidewalks on both sides, there still have to be bike accommodations, not including a sharrow. So there's, that's when you start looking at shared use paths that can accommodate both bike and ped. How far away from the school campus can the proposed infrastructure be? The project limits are within 2 miles of the K through 12 school. So in looking at that again, looking at a complete network, so not just improving one intersection 2 miles away, how are you making that connection for students to get from that intersection we're improving 2 miles away to school, right? So there has to be that connection to the school, but the projects can be within 2 miles.
And on the reverse side, Diane, too, if we are missing 300 feet for a good connection, that's something that the department would consider. If we're talking about 5 or 3 miles, that would be very hard to justify. But if you need like 300-400 feet for making that connection, that's definitely something that we would be very open to consider.
Thank you. This one might be another one for you, Francisco. We have a narrow tarmac sidewalk on one side of Route 10 that would connect center of town to the primary school. Not wide enough for a shared use path, or certainly not sidewalk on both sides. Would that qualify?
If the reasons for not being able to provide sidewalks and bicycle accommodations are not the reasons that I mentioned before, taking someone's house or an existing bridge, we're not going to ask that the bridge is widened as part of this, but try to provide connections within the bridge. It's a very specific case. I would like to see that particular case, but in general, even right away is not an issue should not be an issue to provide a network that is comfortable for people walking and biking, especially students, as part of this program.
Thank you. Gwen asked, and yes, does sidewalk have to be on both sides, or does certain right-of-way allow for waivers like wetlands topography? I think you've covered that, right?
Mhm.
So other than time, budget, taking someone's house, there has to be a really good reason for a waiver.
Correct.
Yeah. Same question, sidewalk can be difficult with narrow roads. Yep. Let's see here. Does a project need to be tied to a specific school, or could it be something that benefits 2 different schools, such as something in a district where kids could attend either school or may cross a major road to reach one school or another? Yes, it can benefit 2 schools as long as the project is within 2 miles of both of those schools. And both schools are partners and have been partners for at least 6 months as of today. That would make them eligible. So you can put
That's
both in there.
part of that. I just had it. Is it true that at least one school has to be the lead on the application? Or we've had multiple schools kind of co-apply or
Yeah,
jointly
we've
apply?
had multiple schools, and at that point, usually it might be somebody from the school district that would be the representative for that. So yeah.
Right. Yep.
Okay. Our town is building a new middle school 500 feet from an existing rail trail that passes through our town and 2 other schools. The path would go through town, land, and up a hill. Is this a project that would fit into what you're looking for? So is the project meaning the path connecting to the rail trail? I think that's Mr. Welsh. Is he? Yes. Yeah, I think yes, those are the types of projects I think that we love, is connecting to existing networks. But Derek can speak a little bit more to that if you'd like.
Yeah, I think it certainly sounds like it's an eligible project. I think, and there I saw another question about trails being eligible. I think, yeah, that's definitely an eligible use of funding, is connections to rail trails. I think the bigger consideration would be what Diane's been mentioning, that the case really has to be made that that connection would provide a safer path to school or safer route to school. And just for, you know, in general, as part of this, it's always helpful to see as part of applications where student populations are concentrated and where some pain points are for getting to and from school. So I just throw that out there as part of this, that that's always a really useful piece of information for us when we evaluate applications. So provided that, you know, that kind of project would make that connection, then yeah, that sounds like definitely an eligible project and something we're looking for. Yes.
And for trails, you want to keep in mind, if even if you're looking at a pathway maybe in the woods or somewhere like that, it does have to still be ADA accessible. So you have to have lighting, you have to be able to accommodate, you know, slopes for, you know, ramps and stopping points, and it has to be fully accessible for season. You know, all of the accommodations still are in play for even if it's a trail or a trail connection. I think I just answered that question. Does this grant include trail development? If it is a 4-season ADA compatible trail, yes. Can this program be used to extend an existing network along a state highway, Route 3A? I'll put that out to MassDOT.
Extend an existing network along a state highway. So I think if the question is whether work can take place on state-owned roadways, I think the answer is yes. We can. These are federally funded projects, and once they get awarded, they get treated as a normal federally funded MassDOT infrastructure project. And so, you know, in that sense, they can be on state-owned roadways. I think the answer to this question would just depend on what is meant by existing network. If it's bike and pedestrian network, then yes. If it's, you know, adding sidewalks or better crossings on state highways or state-owned roadways, excuse me, then that would be eligible. Yes.
Marlene asks, how often does the application process take place? Well, in the last several years, it's taken place. COVID was a little disruptive, but we did have a round last year. We are having one this year. The goal is to have them each year, but obviously that depends on funding. But Derek or Miranda can maybe, it's a sticky because we don't want to ever promise anything in case funding perhaps goes away, but then just the anticipated goal is to have it happening every year around the same time.
Yep, that's correct. Yeah, we intend this to be an annual process. Yep.
Do schools have, oh, sorry, go ahead, Derek.
Oh, no, I was just going to say with each year funding the next year of our state transportation improvement program where we are. So like Dan said, right now we're awarding projects for fiscal year 2027. And then the next round of awards, we'd be looking to fund the next year out. So fiscal year 2028 next year. And projects can move based on their readiness and how quickly they advance. But as the placeholder for where we fund them in our program, that's the approach, is taking it year by year.
Thank you. Do schools have to have been actively participating, quote unquote, in the past 6 months? What if they've done something a few years ago but haven't registered anything recently? So it's not to say that it's hard and fast. You had to been doing things actively in the last 6 months, but we do look at really recent activity. We do understand that COVID kind of threw a wrench in things, and some schools disappeared off the off the Safe Routes map for a little bit and are coming back and working with us. So I think we take all of that into consideration. We look for, overall, what has the activity level been, and are people responding to our emails, and are they participating in flagship day events? And so it's a combination of a lot of different things, but we've been really cognizant of the COVID factor, and we do realize that schools are starting to come back on board a little bit more. So hopefully that answers that. Only 2 of our 3 schools are listed as partner schools. Most of the sidewalk are intended for the school that's not listed. Can we still proceed? I'm hesitant to say yes if 2 of the 3 are, but 1 is not, but the one that it's intended for is not. Help from maybe Derek or Miranda on this one. I mean, you could submit it. I don't know what the evaluation for that would be.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the rubric for the evaluation there, I think partnership level is considered a pretty big scoring factor. So, you know, it's always possible that, you know, if it's just, you know, an incredible project, you know, it's not the whole application. So, yeah, but it would be you know, contribute significantly to the ranking. But there are other considerations aside from partnership. So I'll just kind of say that. But yeah, it's not like we will rule it out entirely, but it's, you know, it will impact the score.
The reason why we put so much scoring on the Safe Routes partnership is that doing infrastructure alone doesn't help improve the safety or the behaviors, and doing just the education alone doesn't. It's together that really makes the difference in how we see changes in the community and in the school. So it's really important to still have that education component and the encouragement component and all of those other E's that we spoke about, because that combined with the infrastructure is what's going to make the difference in the change. So that's why it's important. Can you give examples of bicycle infrastructure you have funded? Do bicycle boulevards, neighborways qualify using distributed traffic calming to quiet streets used by students commuting schools?
That's a good example. Traffic calming that would slow speeds and provide a better environment for people who are willing to bike on the street could be a good project. We still would prefer to see bike lanes or share use paths, but I mean, that's something that would be eligible if there is no space, if that is the only alternative that can be done.
I don't believe we have funded anything like that previously. Is that right, Derek? If I'm thinking back to some of the projects, not yet at least.
Right. Yeah, I think the bulk of the bicycle facilities in past projects has been for things like shared use paths or bike lanes, connecting a school. So, but yeah, I think like a few others, it's not that those types of projects would be considered. I think, you know, it would be done in coordination. Once the projects are awarded, they kind of go into project development, they get assigned a designer, so that they would look at a lot of different potential treatments, including the ones mentioned. And if it feels like that's the most appropriate, you know, design solution, then it can be considered. It, you know, that level of specificity doesn't have to be in the application. So, you know, if you want to propose that, it's certainly something that we would then consider as the project gets developed. But those, yeah, as long as they're, you know, appropriate for the project.
You also bring up a really good point that I think I forgot to mention earlier, which is just because you've asked for something in the application, that doesn't mean that that's what's going to be funded. So part of what you receive with this grant is the expertise of the Safe Routes to School team coming out with MassDOT to evaluate the project area and then saying, okay, what are the improvements that we can make here that really fit the Safe Routes to School infrastructure program, and they may be different from what you've asked for. So that's just something to keep in mind. Question from Sam says, would a project at the PS&E stage be ready to bid this winter be considered? That's a MassDOT question.
I think we'd probably need a little more information. Is it, we would think about whether it's already funded. I feel like most projects that are at that stage of design, you know, may have funding already. If it doesn't, all of these projects have to go through the MassDOT prescribed project development process. And so if the project meets, the projects all have to meet MassDOT's design criteria and engineering directives, and also, you know, check all the boxes of the federal process. So if it's at, you know, it would depend on who's reviewing those submissions and making it at that level of design. We, you know, seen projects that maybe have advanced quite far at the municipal level or with, you know, DCR or another agency, but if it's going to get federal funding through MassDOT, it has to meet all of MassDOT's highway division's kind of standards and design considerations. So that's one thing to consider. I think generally though, I mean, this program is really meant to fund projects that are earlier on in design and take them through the process, as opposed to there have been projects that are submitted with initial designs, usually at the conceptual level. Like if your municipality has a on-call design consultant, we've seen plenty of applications that already have existing designs, but they're usually at the stage where MassDOT can then assign a design team and carry it through our normal MassDOT project development process.
Thank you, Derek. Francisco, this one's for you. Would 8-foot wide sidewalks on each side of the roadway accommodate bike and ped be considered?
That's the bare minimum that is recommended for a shared use path, and that could be acceptable. And at a pinch point, desirable would be 12 feet.
Thank you. Gwen asks if we've done design and engineering work, would the 2027 construction start hold true? That is a long wait.
So that's where we would place the project for funding and after the initial award. After that point, projects can and do move based on how quickly they advance in design. And just to echo what I said in the last response, I think we'd have to see that it's making progress toward the MassDOT milestones and project development. But if it does go through that process quickly, we've seen particularly for smaller projects, they can advance years. So it's not a hard, requirement that it only gets funded in 2027. Projects do move around all the time. And once it's part of our normal federal aid program, projects move, other projects might get pushed back, and it might open up a slot for that one to be funded. So yeah, understand that it is a long wait. The anything federally funded can take a long time with the criteria and the process, but that does not have to be. Yeah, it can change, and it can be earlier depending.
Okay, in the interest of time, I'm going to try and get through these really quickly. We have about 7 minutes left. Can we submit more than one project for municipality? Yes, that answer is yes. It would just have to be two separate projects, especially if they're at different schools and they're different projects. So yes, you can have more than one application. We have Colette says we have an intersection very close to an elementary school, which is very challenging for all users, not signalized. Would adding a signal with more safe marked crossings to make walking and biking safer qualify, even though there would not be a separated specified bike lane?
That's a more complicated question because it gets into a lot of other processes within the department. You need to do an intersection concept evaluation. I probably would try to stay away from a signalized intersection or signalizing an intersection just for that reason, because it would be a lot more expensive to do. Might be better for the municipality to begin that project through another program.
Thanks, Francisco. Is a pedestrian walkway over Route 62 in Danvers that a student must cross to get from one side of the campus to the other acceptable? I think we talked a little bit about pedestrian walkways over probably municipal or state roads. So this in particular, I think you're asking on campus to get from one place to another. Interesting. I think we'd have to know more. Derek or Francisco, Miranda?
Yeah, I think we would have to know.
Yeah.
I think projects that are entirely on school grounds can be a little bit complicated, and it opens up some right-of-way considerations. I don't know if we've ever had a project that's been entirely on school grounds. I think this might be an exception just because of the nature of it. It sounds like it's a safety concern just based on the information, but something that we would have to consider. But if it included other elements too, like if better connections to school, that might be factored into. But good
Thank you.
question. And I'd say with all of this too, we have our Safe Routes to School email address that I know you've published. So if folks have more specifics that they want to share, please feel free to reach out to that, and we can definitely chat offline.
Another question was asked, does the project need to have a bike component in order to be eligible? That was a direct message. So sorry if those of you looking in the chat don't see that in there. The answer from my perspective is yes. And I think that everything we've published in the guidelines is that it needs to accommodate both bike and ped. So the need is yes. We have gone up against these projects in the past where we don't include them, and the scope ends up getting way out of hand because they weren't included from the beginning, and MassDOT has asked us to go back and include them. So the answer is yes, unless from me, unless MassDOT disagrees.
Yeah, no, I concur.
Okay, and Susan says, regards to funding, it appears the project can range from 2.5 to 250K, 1.5. MassDOT will cover 100%, and grantees just need to cover right-of-way and permitting type costs. Is that correct? So right-of-way, yes, is funded by the, or any right-of-way acquisition costs are funded by the municipality. Design and construction is funded 100%. Am I missing anything else on that?
Nope, that's all correct. Yep.
Steve asks, is 12 feet the absolute minimum width allowed? I think Francisco said 12 is the preferred, 8 is the minimum at a pinch point.
At a pinch point, and yeah,
Yes.
and yeah, and if you think about it, it's similar to a pedestrian path that is should be 5 feet as a general rule. You are allowed a small pinch point of 3 feet because of an obstruction. It's in a similar way. An 8 feet shared use path would be okay in a pinch point. 12 feet is the most recommended one. I know we've seen 10 feet shared use paths, but then with the obstructions that exist, that reduces the effective width. So that doesn't mean that if we don't see anything that is 12, we're not going to consider. Sometimes something is better than nothing. So it's more so on a case-by-case scenario.
Okay, I don't see any other questions in the chat. I don't know if anyone's brave enough to come off. We have 2 minutes left if anyone wants to come off mute and ask a question. Or again, in the guidebook, you have the MassDOT Safe Routes to School email address, and you can ask direct questions to any of us here. Otherwise, this recording will be available online, and today the applications are open. If you did put one in, map it from last year, and you want to resubmit, just give us a heads up so that we know that you are resubmitting. Definitely maybe changing some things up in there so we can see that the application is more current. Trying to think if there's anything else we need to address, but you all asked very good questions, so I'm impressed.
I do have one question if you'll take a question.
Yes, sure. Go ahead.
I'm Dave Coleman. I'm in Belmont. I put a question in the chat. I don't know if you got to it. I was asking about what the NACTO standards call bicycle boulevards or neighborways.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the...
Oh, I think we talked about that. We haven't funded any projects in the past like that, but I think, Francisco, you said certainly would be considered, right? If that was the only option or one of the options given the environment.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
because in our case, we have a couple of streets under review now that the high school is part of Safe Routes to School. Our town is very small, 1 by 2 miles. And, a couple of particular streets could connect basically the length of the town. But in order to make the best use of money, we've considered this concept instead of, like a dedicated separated lane. We've just done our first separated lane on a main road in front of the combined middle and high school. But we've been looking at this as well.
Okay, yeah. It's definitely something that Francisco said that we could consider.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, great. Well, I appreciate everyone sticking around for the full hour, and please reach out if you have any questions, and good luck. We look forward to seeing your fantastic applications.